What if you were told that for over 3 decades, a league of silent warriors, bound by an oath of secrecy, held the largest empire on Earth at bay? This is not a myth. This is the story of a resistance that has been whispered in the shadows of history. A conflict the British Empire tried to erase. And a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who refused to be conquered. This is the story of the Ecumekw. In the late 19th century, as the tendrils of the British Empire snaked their way across the globe, they reached the lands of the Igbo people, west of the mighty Niger River. This was Anioma, a region of proud, independent communities, each with its own leaders and traditions. They were a people who bowed to no king, for their society was built on a complex system of consensus and respect, not top-down authority. The British, with their insatiable appetite for resources and their unshakable belief in their own superiority, saw not a civilization, but a territory ripe for the taking. Initially, it was not the crown itself, but a corporation that cast its shadow over Anioma, the Royal Niger Company. Armed with a charter from the Queen, they came not as equals, but as masters. They sought to monopolize the lucrative palm oil trade, the very lifeblood of the local economy. The people of Anioma soon found that the scales of trade were tipped irrevocably in favor of the white man. Their economic autonomy was being strangled, and their cultural fabric was being systematically unraveled by the arrival of Christian missionaries, who condemned their age-old customs and beliefs as pagan. But the Igbo of Anioma were not a people to be easily subjugated. As the arrogance of the Royal Niger Company grew, so too did a silent, simmering rage. In the dead of night, in secret gatherings shrouded by the thick canopy of the forest, the young men of the various Anioma communities began to organize. They called themselves the Ecumekw. The name itself was a vow of silence. A promise to never speak of their plans, to move like the wind, unseen and unheard, until the moment of strike. The Ecumekw was not an army in the European sense. It was a brotherhood, a secret society of warriors united by a single, unwavering purpose: to drive the British from their land. The first stirrings of the rebellion began in 1883. A series of sporadic, yet coordinated attacks that sent a clear message to the Royal Niger Company. These were not random acts of violence. They were calculated strikes of resistance. The Ecumekw employed a masterful understanding of their environment, using the dense forests and winding pathways as their allies. They would emerge from the shadows, strike with ferocious intensity, and vanish back into the landscape before the British could mount an effective response. This was guerrilla warfare in its purest form, a strategy that confounded and frustrated the technologically superior colonial forces. One of the earliest and most significant confrontations occurred in 1898. In response to the growing audacity of the Ecumekw, the British, under the command of Major Festing, launched a punitive expedition against the town of Ebusa. They came with their cannons and their rifles, expecting a swift and decisive victory that would crush the spirit of the resistance. What they found was a town transformed into a fortress. The Ecumekw warriors, armed with little more than Dane guns, machetes, and an unyielding courage, met the British head-on. The battle for Ebusa was a brutal, bloody affair. Though the British eventually took the town, the cost was high, and the encounter shattered any illusions of an easy conquest. This brings us to our first dramatic turn. The Ebusa campaign, intended to be a show of force, had the opposite effect. Instead of intimidating the people of Anioma, it galvanized them. The tales of the bravery of the Ebusa defenders spread like wildfire, inspiring more young men to take the Ecumekw oath. The rebellion, which had been a collection of localized skirmishes, now coalesced into a full-blown war. For the next few years, the Ecumekw waged a relentless campaign against the British. They attacked trading posts, disrupted supply lines, and targeted colonial officials. The British found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see, a phantom that haunted the forests and struck with deadly precision. The British response was one of escalating brutality. Frustrated by their inability to pin down the Ecumekw, they turned their wrath upon the civilian population. Villages were burned to the ground. Farms were destroyed. And anyone suspected of being a member of the Ecumekw, or even a sympathizer, was subject to arrest, torture, and execution. The British sought to break the will of the people by turning their homeland into a wasteland. But the spirit of the Ekumeniku and the people of Anioma was not so easily broken. Now, we must delve deeper into the shadows of this conflict, to a truth that is often sanitized in colonial histories. The British engaged in what can only be described as a campaign of terror. In 1904, the British commander W.E.B. Crawford, in a dispatch, requested more powerful weaponry to crush the Anioma communities. The very landscape of Anioma became a weapon against its own people, as the British cleared vast swathes of forest to deny the Ekumeniku their natural cover. The human cost of this scorched earth policy was immense, a chapter of suffering that is rarely acknowledged in mainstream historical accounts. You can find mentions of these brutal tactics in scholarly works such as Don C. Ohadike's seminal book, The Ekumeniku Movement, a vital source for anyone seeking to understand the true nature of this conflict. By 1902, after years of relentless fighting, the British believed they had finally crushed the Ekumeniku. A massive military expedition swept through Anioma, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The leaders of the rebellion were captured, imprisoned, and in some cases, executed. The British proudly declared the Ekumeniku completely broken. And here lies our second dramatic turn. The British had underestimated the resilience of the Igbo spirit. Just 2 years later, in 1904, when the colonial administration was beginning to feel secure in its conquest, the Ekumeniku rose again. From the ashes of their defeat, a new generation of warriors emerged, their hearts filled with the stories of their fallen fathers and a burning desire for vengeance. The rebellion was reignited, and for the next decade, the forests of Anioma once again echoed with the sounds of resistance. The final phase of the Ekumeniku War was perhaps its most desperate and brutal. The British, now more determined than ever to extinguish the flames of rebellion, poured more troops and resources into the conflict. The fighting was intense, with heavy casualties on both sides. In 1909, during an engagement in Agweshiaku, the British commander, H.C. Chapman, was killed. A significant blow to the colonial forces, and a testament to the unwavering ferocity of the Ekumeniku. But the tide was turning. The relentless pressure of the British military, their superior firepower, and their ruthless tactics began to take their toll. By 1914, after more than 30 years of continuous warfare, the Ekumeniku rebellion was finally suppressed. The last of its leaders were captured, and the people of Anioma, battered and exhausted, were forced to submit to British rule. That same year, the northern and southern protectorates of Nigeria were amalgamated, and the land of the Ekumeniku was absorbed into a new colonial entity. The story of the Ekumeniku is a powerful reminder that history is not always written by the victors. For decades, this incredible tale of resistance was largely ignored, a footnote in the grand narrative of the British Empire. But the memory of the Ekumeniku lived on, passed down through generations of Anioma people, a source of pride, and a symbol of their enduring strength. It stands as one of the longest and most determined resistance movements in the history of colonial Africa. A 30-year war fought not for glory or conquest, but for the fundamental right of a people to determine their own destiny. But as we close this chapter of history, a question lingers in the shadows. While the Ekumeniku Rebellion was officially crushed in 1914, did the spirit of their resistance truly die? Or did it simply go dormant, waiting for another moment to rise? Some historians suggest that the tactics and the unwavering resolve of the Ekumeniku inspired later anti-colonial movements across Africa. The story of the Ekumeniku is a testament to the fact that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit can burn with a fire that no empire can ever truly extinguish. And one has to wonder, what other stories of incredible resistance lie buried, waiting to be rediscovered? If you found this story of defiance and resilience as captivating as we did, be sure to like this video and subscribe to History Off the Map for more unknown stories from our shared past. And let us know in the comments below, what other forgotten histories do you think deserve to be told? We read every one of your suggestions. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know about history.